as well. Great. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Meghna Hussain. I'm the Policy and Partnerships Manager here at South Asian Americans Leading Together. Really excited that folks could join us today on a really important panel and discussion on H-4 recipients and the impact on mental health. So as we all know, we've been experiencing an ongoing threat to immigrant communities and have been seeing this administration's various vicious policies to ban or deport immigrants across the spectrum, including DACA and temporary protected status recipients, to refugees, asylum seekers, and we know that the Muslim ban is continuing and ongoing. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, the Trump administration has issued several executive orders to either ban or limit access for migrant workers, including H-1B recipients and J-1 visa holders. And today we're going to be talking about the other half of the H-1B visa holders, the H-4 visa holders. In 2015, after several years of advocacy by community members, including local South Asian women's organizations, the Department of Homeland Security issued a rule that would allow certain H-4 dependent spouses of H-1B visa holders to seek employment. Since its beginning, as of December 2017, over 90,000 visa holders have been approved for work authorization. However, many H-4 visa holders, as we know, remain ineligible to work. Nearly 86% of those who received H-4 status were from South Asian countries, primarily India. Over the past few years, SAALT and partner organizations, including AAJC, Immigrant Legal Resource Center, and National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum, have been monitoring and advocating against the Trump administration's intent to revoke employment authorization for H-4 visa holders. And today we're going to hear from H-4 visa holders, artists, mental health experts, and policy experts on the impact and uncertainty caused by this looming threat of rescission for H-4. And also we know that the pandemic has really exacerbated all of the insecurities, from financial dependency to uncertainty to abusive domestic situations. And as someone who was also a former H-4 dependent, I have a very personal relationship to this, and also, you know, I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. So with us today, we have Meghna Damani, who is a filmmaker and former H-4 visa holder. She is also the director of Heart Suspended, a film that we're going to be watching just shortly. We also have with us Sumana, who's a former H-4 dependent. She was recently featured on Humans of New York. We also have Essaheb, who is the Director of Immigration Advocacy at Advancing Justice, and Aisha Choudhry, who is a social worker and mental health expert at Raksha, who is also a NCSO partner with SAALT. So we're really excited to have everyone here today. And I think I'm going to pass it out to Aisha, who's going to really frame you know, the work that Raksha did as part of the South Asian Women's Organizations in securing work authorization in 2015. So I'll pass it to you, Aisha.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha Choudhry. I am a therapist at Raksha. We are a South Asian nonprofit based in Georgia. We help survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Before I begin, I just want to make sure that we're all okay during these turbulent times. If we can all just take a deep breath in and deep breath out. Breathwork has been doing amazing work with my clients and myself during this time. So if we could just all take a few moments just to take a deep breath in and out. All right, so we at Raksha saw the first-hand impact of how the abused spouse H-4 employment authorization helped our clients. We wanted to utilize our resources which were relationships with others in the field and community to get this accomplished for our clients. This was important for us to do, as not being able to work puts many survivors in situations where they can be re-victimized and taken advantage of. In 2004, 2005, an attorney named Shivali Shah, who was involved with Karen in North Carolina, had an idea to try to make this happen. Shivali brought this to Raksha's executive director, who had connections to Leslie Orloff, an attorney who worked on the original 1994 VAWA, to have work authorization for abused H-4s added to legislation, specifically VAWA 2005. It was passed but was forgotten. Raksha's executive director, Aparna Bhattacharya, and other South Asian women organizations brought it up many times throughout the years, but no regulations were being put out to follow through. There was more focus being put on U visa regulations. Raksha's executive director kept nudging her friends in power about it. But luckily, with the support of former SAALT policy director Manar Wahid, who was at the time an immigration advisor for the White House, and Amanda Baran, who had a leadership role for the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the work of a local Georgia attorney, Nisha Karnani, who mobilized Sabah lawyers to push for the regulations to be issued. The regulations were out and the final step was activated. Aparna stated that she remembers that many times she would talk to immigration lawyers about this, and they would act like she didn't know what she was talking about, and she would have to show them the law. It was a journey, but Raksha and other South Asian women organizations and advocacy groups were persistent, because we knew this is something our clients needed to be safe and autonomous and not dependent on their abusers or community members who would often take advantage of the fact that abused H-4s could not work and were vulnerable.
Thanks, Aisha. And we continue to, just be so thankful for all these incredible organizers and women and impacted folks who really came out and fought for this, because it was critical and it remains critical. And so now I want to pass it off to Meghna Damani, as I mentioned, who's a filmmaker, and she'll be giving an intro for her film, Heart Suspended.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a little echo though.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much, Manu, and thanks so much, Aisha. It's really amazing, to learn of all the amazing work that all these Raksha and other organizations like you have been doing for dependent spouses. So, when I came to the country back in 2002, I wasn't really aware of, all these organizations and didn't have much access to them. Unfortunately, they were limited. I think internet was just about beginning at that time. And, we didn't have that kind of access. But I remember, when my husband mentioned that I wouldn't be able to work on the H-4 visa, at that time he was already in the US and we had been apart for about 3 years already. And I couldn't wait to see him. But at the same time, I was working in India, like 12 to 14 hours work days in a multinational ad agency. So initially when I heard like you won't be able to work, I was like, wow, yay, I finally get a break. But yeah, I didn't really realize, how long, the wait would be and what exactly it involved. And I just felt like, I have a master's degree, I have all this work experience, so, I'm going to get a job very easily and find a sponsor. But really, I had no idea, what I was up for. And that was really, I think, one of the darkest periods of my life. And, during that time is, when I made Heart Suspended. And I just felt, that I had to make this film because every day I would meet women like me who were suffering in silence and, putting on this brave front. And at that time, as you may be aware, there was really no recognition of this issue at all. And what was even more shocking, that even amongst the South Asian immigrant circles, there was a kind of an absolute denial, about the torture, that a woman goes through being educated, capable individual who's leaving behind her friends and entire family and a thriving career. And she's just denied, a basic human right to work. So, also, starting off your marriage that way is very debilitating because you're kind of entering the marriage as like a half person, and it permanently damages your self-worth, your self-confidence, and your relationship, of course, not only with your husband, but your friends and your family as well. So, this film was really born from all that angst. I didn't know how to make a film. I just, you'll see more of that in the film, so I won't share that now. But basically, it was made in 2007, but I felt, it was a really poignant moment now, because even after so many years, we still find that women on H-4 are still suffering. And in many cases, it's, of course, even worse now with the current immigration system. So, that's why I really wanted to thank SAALT and all of you for coming together, giving this opportunity, to watch the film again and, give us an opportunity to talk about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Meghna. All right, folks, I'm gonna share my screen so that we can start. Can folks see this? Yeah, okay. Oh wait, I apologize, 1 second. Yeah, I think it should be okay. This is a 20-minute film, so if folks want to go off video, that's fine too. But we're gonna play this from the start.
Real life is different from the movies, they told me. But I continued to believe that growing up, each of us had that one significant word that became our motto. That word determined how big we saw the world to be, how many mountains we thought we could climb, and how many rainbows we believed we could reach. For me, that word was independence. The very first thing I lost when I set foot in the land of the free, and they stamped me as dependent spouse on my passport. When I was growing up, my father told me that it was important in life to be able to support oneself. Despite the pressures of supporting his mother and brothers, he made tremendous sacrifices for my sisters and my education. I made promises in my diary to always be there for him. I put aside esoteric dreams of being an artist, painter, or writer, and decided that I needed a stable career. I majored in business, and after graduating, wrote for a newspaper and modeled. I will never be financially dependent on anyone as long as I live, I used to tell myself. I made enough money modeling to pay for business school, where I felt safe about my future. I got a job at JWT Mumbai, one of the topmost advertising agencies at the time. I loved work, got promoted every year. My colleagues, bosses, and clients loved me. I didn't think twice about giving it all up and moving to America after marrying my boyfriend of 8 years. We had a long-distance relationship for 3 years while he was doing his MBA at Penn State University in Pennsylvania, and I was in India working. How bad could it be? After all, I was going to the land of opportunity. I would take a break and, of course, I would get back and do something. We knew that I wouldn't be able to work for a while. 5 years later, I'm still not allowed to work or have any form of income on my H-4 or dependent spouse visa.
H-4 visa holders are not allowed work authorization, though they are in the country legally, right? These are not people who've come in against the will of the Immigration Service. You know, the INS knows they're here, but they're not allowed work authorization, as well as a lot of other accompanying rights which most people enjoy in the US. And most of their problems stem from these restrictions. They can neither work for anybody else, nor can they generate their own income through self-employment. No income can they have in this country. They also are not allowed social security numbers, which means they cannot do things like open their own bank account, get a credit card. They don't have a credit history, which without a credit history, you have no presence in the US.
I spent days and nights and every spare minute I got looking for jobs on the internet. My master's in India and even my work experience with the multinational was disregarded. I depended on my husband for tiny things like finding a doctor or for going from one place to another. Each rejection, each time I called him in the office to ask a stupid question, depleted one more layer of my confidence. I was no longer the Meghna who used to make people laugh, who added value. I finally got a call for an interview with a large media company. The interview went very well and I was asked to meet with a supervisor. But the moment I mentioned my visa situation, I was told to leave. I felt emotions that day that I was not used to feeling. This severe sense of rejection, this severe sense of despair. Eventually, I had to go on medication for depression. I was shocked to see ads for these dangerous medicines on television. Somehow, it didn't seem like the solution. I started to realize that there was so much suffering in this country. But then why do so many people come here? Why were we here? Nobody back home could understand what I was complaining about. I didn't have a single person to talk to the whole day. I felt scared and I felt alone. We were in the country of abundance, but does abundance lead to contentment? That day, I was sitting at my desk. I could just see that there was just no future. I didn't know how I could ever get the lost time back. And I didn't even want it. I didn't want that time back. I didn't want any time going forward. I just wanted to end it all. I just wanted to just die. To no longer feel this guilt, to no longer feel this wastefulness, to no longer feel like a burden. I just wanted to die. The first time I chanted the words Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, I had no idea that this was the name of my life itself. My single prayer was to see even a small glimpse of the old me. I started to develop faith. For the first time, I started to believe that the whole universe was inside me and that I could make all my dreams come true. I found a new appreciation and understanding of life. My suffering was because of karma I had created based on the law of cause and effect. I realized that everything I had gone through was for a purpose. I found strength to help other women on this visa by making a film. Only I had never held a camera in my life. And that was still easier than getting women on dependent spouse visas to talk to me on camera. I read their painful stories on blogs. I put up ads and flyers. But after 1.5 years of looking and waiting, there was still silence. Eventually, I met Rachna, who had been unemployed for over 3 years.
I came here in 2003, Jan 2003. My company was basically into trading in currencies for non-resident Indians and overseas corporate bodies. What I liked maximum is just the fact that I was part of the equity market because I think I had a passion for investments in the stock market since I was a kid. I quit a month before I got married. Came here within 10 days of my marriage. Any wonderful memories? he was like, just go do the GMAT, go and study. But he didn't understand what it was taking out of me to go and take the GMAT. I was looking at finances and he's like, what's the big deal? Take a loan, what's the big deal? I'll fund you, what is the, like very like, why are you like upset, or why are you crying, or what is it? Even went through the stage in our lives where, people would keep asking him, what was Rachna doing? And he would be like, she's looking for jobs and she's, planning to study. And I kept thinking that every time people asked him about me, he would change the topic. At some point, I thought he was embarrassed to talk about me because I wasn't doing anything. Like every single thing used to kill me.
These windows are so much dust in them.
How to clean? And he's like, "Are you crazy? Why would I do that?" And he's a pretty straightforward guy, so I believe him when he tells me that he's not doing it. But it's just like every action of his, every reaction of his made me feel inferior. I wanted to start working, and I applied to a few jobs. The first question would be like, what's your status?
It is just paperwork to convert from an H-4 to an H-1B, but what people don't realize is how hard it is to get everything in place. And the women that I've talked to, almost all of them have said it's easy to get a job, very hard to get sponsorship. I'm looking at somebody who, I need to pay an extra $5,000 for, can't work for me for another 3 months, and they're talking about some process I've never heard of. And at the end of it, it's still possible that immigration will say, no, this is so much risk and money that they really have to love you so much more than any other candidate that they're willing to do all this for you.
Rachna pushed herself to take the GMAT. She did her master's and was now allowed to work for a year. Her year was almost up, but still no company was willing to do her visa. My search for a main character continued. I enrolled for the documentary filmmaking program at the new school. It was a difficult decision for numerous reasons, but it felt great to engage with society and use my mind after so long. Still, at the end of the first semester, I only had the interview with the advocate and no main
sitting on their
character.
high horse and just complaining about being bored at home. It's a much bigger issue than that. These are not your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. These are highly skilled, white-collar professionals. For the ones that are battered, it's utterly barbaric, the conditions under which they're being forced to live.
Your diary aspect might fit in to these people's stories.
Although I was filming myself out of desperation, I was still hoping deep inside that I would find my protagonist before the course ended.
I did speak to two women, and one of them, she was really very interested in doing the thing, and she spoke to me extensively on the phone. But then she spoke to her husband, and he said, this might affect our green card process. So do you really want to do this? And so then she said, I'm not going to do it. So it's just like, just the comedy or the parody of me trying to find these women, and it is an issue, but nobody wants to talk about it.
I started to wonder if it was foolish of me to want to make this film. I could understand their fear. I could understand why they were silent. But that angered me at the same time.
Their situation becomes less interesting, for me at least, than your particular journey.
It's kind of like you are that woman. Like the search is really like leading to you because you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Of all the people that you have filmed, you're the only one who still, you don't have an internship. You're in school, but you can't work. So it seems like the whole thing leads back to you.
Yeah.
I wasn't totally comfortable making a movie about myself. I wondered why it was so difficult. It meant digging back into a part of my life that I had shut away. I wanted to believe I was this confident person making a movie about this issue. I did not want to acknowledge all that I had lost. My confidence, my dreams. How could I expect these other women to expose their suffering and failures if I couldn't? I understood why there was silence. I was clear that this film had to be made, and what an important role documentary had in the world. I wanted to be a more intrinsic part of this world, So I decided to go for the full-frame documentary film festival in North Carolina with my classmates. With the financial strain escalating, I knew it was a stretch. I saw it as an investment for my future. My usually supportive husband did not agree.
You'll extrapolate it to the same old situation. I can't go, I don't have a visa, so therefore. Going to India is not negotiable. Within India, traveling within India is not negotiable. All of these are non-negotiable. That means you don't take ownership and accountability of the fact that you're studying. You don't want to cut back on this lifestyle because there are obviously, certain financial considerations associated with that. That's my 2 cents for it.
What ownership and accountability should I be taking?
Do you even know what we have in our bank account?
It's not my money.
Oh, let's have another conversation some other time.
Abhi, I'd like to finish this conversation.
In the 13 years that I had known him, we had never fought about money. We came here to find ourselves, but have we lost ourselves forever?
I've met so many women who, back in their home countries, had their own sources of income, were contributing to their family income, and all of a sudden they go from being independent human beings, becoming basically a child where every time they want something, they have to ask their husband for money. There becomes that tension where because the wife is not contributing, some of the husbands end up having this feeling of, well, you're not earning, so I have more say in how we spend the money. But in the other dynamic where the husbands are saying, what do you think? What should we do? The women themselves are feeling so guilty that they opt out of making financial decisions.
I had to remind myself that he was the same man who had stood by me, no matter what. We had to win over this situation and not let it win over us. We decided to have an open dialogue about all the issues.
What did you think that I was perceiving all this time?
I think it just didn't matter to you.
2 years ago, if you had asked me, I felt that, hey, what's so different about your experience as opposed to those hundreds and thousands of others who have done the same thing? I see that certain mannerisms of mine over a period of time were about my own perspectives of what you should do, what you should not do. I realized that those were just plain immaturity. Because you're a very outgoing person. I took it for granted that you would manage. I didn't realize how formidable this whole H1 thing is. When I saw someone else who I never heard before say everything you used to tell me all the time, it suddenly dawned on me that everyone else feels that way. But when I interact with them socially, I only see one facet of it.
For the women who are lucky enough to marry the supportive husbands, there's only so much that the husbands can do. They want somebody who's going to contribute to the family income, to have her own goals. Now they have somebody who is completely dependent on them, not only financially, but for learning everything in this new country, and it takes a toll. This is new for them. They too don't have their support structure near them. There's only one of them that's employed, so if one loses the job, that's it. They have to leave the country right away.
Of course, you were definitely there. You always supported me, you always listened. You always tried, but I don't think you could experience what it was like to be in my
That's
place.
exactly it, I couldn't.
And I don't think anybody else can.
I don't think it's possible unless there is some awareness of things beyond your immediate family. Why do you feel defeat right now?
Well, I don't feel total defeat. I feel victory in the sense that I'm trying to do something about this. I feel defeat at the sense of the loss of time.
I've done lobbying work. I've heard a lot of people say they're lucky that they get to come here at all. Let's talk about America's commitment to family values. When you say to somebody, we need you in this country because we have this much work that needs to be done and this country is not producing enough people. But what does it say if you only let their family in, but not as human beings? These are people who are being brought in only in the most base functions of women: housewife, baby makers, and sex partners. This really comes out when you see women that are in domestic violence situations. American women have fought for decades and decades and decades to undo this system where married women's legal identity is lost on the wedding date. But why is it then, flash forward 100 years, that when immigrant women are allowed to come into the US, they're put back in the exact same position?
Why do we come to this country? We come here not to make pots of money or take people's jobs, but to broaden our horizons and build a life. Life, in its infinite vastness, does not define us on the basis of our jobs, education, or salary, nor does it categorize us as dependent or independent. Time and again, it reminds us that we are all interdependent.
Hey, you. Yes.
Hey everyone, 1 second. Wow, thank you so much, Meghna. That was really powerful to watch again. Thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. Well, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts about the film. What did it feel for everyone? What did it bring up? Thoughts, feelings? I'd love to start with Sumana, maybe. As a H-4 dependent, like just looking back at this film, like how did you feel?
It was really impactful and powerful, especially because the story is that of my mother's. I grew up as a child on the H-4 visa, but I saw firsthand the impact and the stress and just the overall toll it puts on the wives who are on H-4s who are unable to work, yet they were super educated and like they want to work, they want to contribute to the household income, yet they're unable to, just being told no again and again and again from the system, and then also being told no from your own partner simply because of legal issues really takes a toll on you. And I saw that in my own house, and I saw it with my mom, and seeing it on the film also was super impactful. So thank you for this film and all the work you do, Meghna.
Anyone else have any thoughts they want to share? I see some comments going on, but if folks wanted to share it out loud. I think what's really, oh, go ahead, Meghna.
I was just going to say, well, first of all, it's beautifully made, so powerful, and thank you so much, Meghna, for making it and sharing all those really personal feelings. It just strikes me how similar it is to my mother's story, you know, growing up when she did and going to college in probably 1969. And it was like the part about how she was raised to get really good grades and go to college and then be a housewife and not work. And how after she had a baby young and was not working, that was the most depressed she's been in her life. So just interesting. It's, you know, we already went through this with the women's movement in the US. To be repeating that is, frustrating, or to have repeated that is very frustrated, or a double standard for immigrants. It's crazy.
And I think just to add, like, the perspective that a humane immigration system is so necessary, where people have the autonomy to work where they would like, be able to migrate with their families, be able to have citizenship. All these different things are so critical for any sort of immigration system that hopefully in the future we will be able to achieve. And so that, folks definitely are experiencing a lot of harm, both mentally, physically. And it's been, doubled and tripled just because of COVID and the way that, we are all experiencing being at home, and our working conditions, and the BLM uprisings. And so there's so many ongoing things that are happening in our communities that are so impactful to our mental health. I want to move on to maybe speaking directly with Sumana. Just maybe tell us a bit more about yourself. I know you shared a little bit about your experience, but your experience as a young dependent on H-4 and some challenges that you faced and experienced. I know that you also shifted a visa category. So how is that experience? And we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is Sumana. I first immigrated to the States when I was about 2.5 years old in '99. My mom and I came about a year after my father originally immigrated, and I basically grew up here. I did go back to India for a very brief amount of time in elementary school, but basically 18 to 19 years of my total life out of 23 years has been spent here. So this is home because family's here, friends here, all my experiences have been here. For the longest time, I didn't know what it meant to be on a visa, because when you're a child, you don't question things such as what's a work permit, like what's an SSN, and like what's an ITIN. All these questions don't pop up in a child's mind. And I only found out the true extent of the situation, bits and pieces of it, senior year of high school. Because I wanted to be an ice cream scooper locally. So I went and interviewed and I got the job. And then I came home with the paperwork and I was like, oh, I need help filling this out. I don't know what these words mean. And then my mom and dad just looked at me and they're like, you can't take this job. And that was like the first big realization. But even then I was like, oh, okay, like they didn't explain the full extent and I didn't question it. So I was like, I'll deal with this later. Then I showed them my college applications and they were like, make sure you note down that you're an international student and that you can afford all these like crazy tuition rates. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I've grown up here. You're telling me I have to pay out of state tuition. I'm going to be compared to international students from crazy prep academies and families that can afford this tuition. And like, we're not them. And that was when my mental health just absolutely spiraled out at the age of 17. Like that's when it started. And it was every year I'd find out something new. And when I was 20, I was approaching 21. At that age, you can't be on a dependent visa as a child. So you have to switch statuses. And my school started doing the paperwork to switch me to an F1, but it wasn't moving fast enough. So I left the country and my visa got rejected. So I was stuck abroad with none of my close family, people I hadn't seen in like over a decade. And I didn't know when I was going to come back or if I'd be able to finish my degree. And thankfully, after a few weeks, I got a notice and the visa got approved and I came back. And that's really what launched me into advocacy and like talking about this and getting really involved with the Undocumented Resource Center at UCLA and finding out that there's so many similarities between the various communities, yet for some reason policy doesn't unite us. I feel like it's really disheartening to see a lot of policies be written in a way where they pit the communities against each other. I feel like we'll be much more stronger if everyone's included on reform. But yeah, that's kind of basically my experience. A lot of the struggles that our mothers face, they're faced by children. And like, I found out when I was 17. I recently found more friends in the community who found out when they were like 10, 11 years old. Imagine you're 10 years old and you're already being prepped for deportation at 21. Like the toll that takes on like a 10-year-old, I can't even imagine. So yeah, that's kind of what inspired me to do a couple initiatives. I founded H-4 Hope last year, which has over 400 people on Facebook, and I put resources and answer people's questions on there kind of as like a support system. And about a month and a half ago, me and 5 other visa dreamers started The Hidden Dream. We're mainly on Instagram, but we raised over $3,000 for a scholarship, and the application closes on September 15th. So if you guys know people who might benefit from it, high school seniors or college undergrads, feel free to reach out to me and I can send you the application link, and I can also send like the Instagram details. But that's kind of my story. I'm really looking to raise more awareness about the impact on children and expanding our Instagram page. Sorry, I rambled a lot, but yeah.
No, that was great. Thank you, Sumana, and thank you for being so courageous and strong and sharing your story. And for folks who are watching on Facebook Live, and then also our NCSO members on Zoom, we'll be able to share some of the links that Sumana mentioned as well. I think advocacy is so important, especially just given the across range of communities that are being impacted and weaponized against one another. I'd love to maybe move on to Aisha, who is again from Raksha, who is one of the leading groups who advocated for H-4 work authorization. Aisha, could you sort of name some of the mental health challenges that you're seeing arise during COVID, and how families, specifically H-4 visa holders and individuals, can be coping, and what are some resources that are available to them?
Yes. So let me just start off with listing the mental health challenges that our clients, the therapists at Raksha have seen with our clients that are on an H-4 visa. With COVID-19 being factored in, we've seen an increased amount of certain mental health challenges. There's a lot of feelings of uncertainty regarding finances and visa application processes. The fear of health risks with COVID-19, financial fears. There have been increased rates of intimate partner violence as well. We are getting an increasing amount of calls. And anxiety for all of the above reasons, as well as over immigration status, different immigration statuses within the families. Like, for example, mother is on an H-4 and a child is a citizen. So before I go into the common feelings and emotions that people at our agency, our clients have been facing, I do want to touch on one key piece. And Manur, you brought up the concept of autonomy. So this kind of ties it all in. The Cambridge Dictionary defines self-determination as the ability or power to make decisions for yourself. According to the theory of self-determination, when our needs are met in three key areas: autonomy, competence, and relatedness, we're able to function well. If these are not met, we're prone to experience depression and anxiety. And this is what we often see with our clients at Raksha. We see these common emotions in our clients: the hopelessness, low self-esteem, loss of identity, which can be exacerbated by cultural differences, moving to a different country with a different culture, feelings of helplessness, isolation, uncertainty, fear, power dynamics in a relationship changing, where someone that was independent has now become dependent on their spouse. And this especially plays out with financial dependence. For the sake of time, I just want to go over just a few symptoms of anxiety and depression, because I think it's important to know the difference between mental health challenges between that and clinical depression and anxiety. You can find a full list of the symptoms for both online. So some common depression symptoms are feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, or hopelessness, angry outbursts of irritability, sleep disturbances, including insomnia or sleeping too much, tiredness or lack of energy, feelings of worthlessness or guilt, and trouble thinking or concentrating. Some common anxiety symptoms are feeling nervous, restless, or tense, breathing rapidly, which is hyperventilation, sweating and trembling, and having difficulty controlling your worry. If you have these symptoms and they're causing problems with your relationship, your family, and other areas of life, you should see a professional. Talking with a mental health professional or a doctor can help prevent things from getting worse, especially if your symptoms have been there for a length of time. When supporting a loved one with mental health issues, it's important to know signs of someone who is having suicidal thoughts. Suicidal thoughts or intentions are serious. Depression carries a higher risk of suicide. Some warning signs are a sudden switch from sadness to extreme calmness or appearing to be happy. Always thinking or talking about death. Clinical depression symptoms that get worse, like the symptoms I mentioned above, if you see an increase in it, making comments about being hopeless, helpless, or worthless, as well as someone putting affairs in order, like they're tying up loose ends or changing their will. And the last one would be if someone is stating that it would be better if they weren't there or they want out. If you or someone you know is experiencing any of these warning signs, please call your local suicide hotline or contact a mental health professional right away, or you can even go to the emergency room. With that, I do want to give 3 resources, 3 crisis numbers that are important to have on hand. If you're located in Georgia, where Raksha is, there's a Georgia Crisis and Access line. Their phone number is 1-800-715-4225. And there's a national suicide hotline. That's 1-800-273-8255. And if you are experiencing any domestic violence, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That's located at 1-800-799-7233. So some common problems that when we're working with H-4 clients, we're seeing these common challenges to getting help. So there's 3 main ones. There's a lack of transportation to getting mental health help, lack of childcare, and language barrier. So those are the 3 common ones that we're seeing. Some coping skills. I know I'm moving fast, but I just want to make sure I'm not taking too much time up. I have a few more things just to mention. Coping skills that I find helpful with my clients are, first one is grounding. And this is helpful when you feel like you've lost all control of your surroundings. A common grounding exercise is 5 senses. So you track 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And this usually can help really quick. I often also tell clients focus on what you can control, how you spend your time versus what you cannot spend your time on. I know that's easier said than done. Lastly, I really encourage self-care, and self-care that goes beyond expensive spas, facials, indulging in brownies. Those are nice, but self-care that nourishes and restores your body, restorative self-care. So that would be nourishing foods, stillness and movement, time in nature, and self-expression. So you could do this by drinking water, moving your body, eating nourishing food, resting when you need, sleeping a healthy amount, and engaging your mind in things you enjoy. So one thing I tell clients is when you want to see if this is a restorative self-care for you, you can ask these questions to yourself. Do I feel more energized after this activity? Are my thoughts and feelings within manageable levels? And do I now have better awareness of who or what was bringing me that stress? If we have time, I would just like to go over a really quick guided meditation. This is the Say Relax Simple Meditation. It's really simple. It's intended to calm your mind. All you do is you follow your breath and you anchor it with a word or phrase. So I would like everyone to take an inhale and say peace. And exhale and say relax. And you keep repeating that for a few times. Inhale, peace. Exhale, relax. And this might seem too simple, but the results can be really significant in terms of releasing stress, slowing down, and just centering yourself. So in essential, grounding yourself. Self-care is only effective though when practiced consistently. So it's really good if you set aside at least 15 minutes per day for self-care. In addition to that, there are a few things that we like to tell clients, practical things that can help you get that competence and autonomy, especially when you're on an H-4. Number one is volunteer work. Obviously with COVID, that might be complicated, but I know organizations are hosting virtual things. So reaching out to your local nonprofit in something that you're passionate about, asking them if they need any help. Joining a book club. There are a lot of virtual things right now. So joining virtual book clubs, joining any interest groups in the community or interest groups. And lastly, enrolling in classes or seminars of your interest, just to get your mind engagement, getting that time in for yourself. And I just want to end with some resources that I think would be helpful for anyone that needs some mental health resources. The first one that I really recommend is self-compassion.org. This has guided self-compassion exercises that are free for anyone to use. The next one is the UCLA Mindful app or their website. They have guided meditation exercises. There's also NAMI, N-A-M-I. This is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and they offer free online support groups for a variety of people. So there's support groups for loved ones of people that are going through mental health issues, people that are struggling themselves. There are those online support groups.
That was so incredible. Thank you so much, Aisha. I'm still like trying to go back to the grounding because that was so great. I really appreciate that. And we'll be sharing a lot of those same resources that Aisha mentioned, both in the follow-up for this webinar. I'm going to move on to speaking to Meghna Essaheb, who is from Asian Americans Advancing Justice. She's an immigration policy director, and I'm going to be sort of just asking you to talk about how COVID has impacted H-4 recipients and all of the ongoing application backlogs, as well as forthcoming H-4 bill and just any sort of immigration bills that you're seeing and impacts.
Thanks, Meghna. I will try to keep it short. Again, I'm with Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC, and our mission is to advance the civil and human rights for Asian Americans and build and promote a fair and equitable society for all. So it's hard to talk about H-4 EAD policies in isolation without acknowledging that this whole administration is really fulfilling a white nationalist agenda through our immigration system. And so from day one, they've supported slashing the number of immigrants to the US in half, I think with a particular focus on preventing people from getting green cards and access to citizenship. And they've done that, of course, through the Muslim ban, attacking family-based immigration through the public charge rule, really kind of decimating the asylum and refugee system, and really making it harder for immigrants who are here in an effort to encourage them to choose to leave the country. So now they're using the pandemic as an excuse to further rush through policies, including right now there's a total immigration ban for people outside the US. Who are coming, it's for people coming out for immigrant visas outside the US and a lot of non-immigrant visas, unless they're coming for the purpose to provide kind of COVID-related research or work in healthcare or other frontline essential workers. You know, obviously there's some logic to that in this moment. We've received feedback on that, but it also really dovetails with what I thought, you know, Meghna did a good job of describing how the way our system is using H-1 workers for whatever purpose we see for the economy, but not treating H-1B workers as human beings, and then their spouses and families as human beings. So, you know, turning to USCIS policies, specific policies right now, well, USCIS has done a lot to try to turn itself into an enforcement agency and increase denials of all kinds of applications. Specifically on July 15th, they quietly put forth some new policy guidance that is sort of quietly encouraging adjudicators to increase, we would think, increase denials even of EAD applications across the board, not just for H-4 visa holders, but for most categories of people who are applying for EAD where there's discretion on the part of the adjudicator. So that's one policy. Then there's also been this issue of delays in adjudicating EAD applications, and both in adjudicating the applications and then delays in creating the actual EAD card that people receive, which there's major delays in. So because, well, I guess the delays in adjudications partly result from January 2017, Department of Homeland Security eliminated a rule that said that EAD applications should be processed within 90 days of receipt. So after they did that, they moved to 4 to 5 months to approve. And then there was litigation regarding the issue of the cards not being issued. So there is some relief for that right now, basically because people sued. Now, if applicants get a renewal, you know, a notice that their EAD application is approved, but they just don't have the card, they can give that to employers, at least if they have that notices as of, I have the date, I think August 20th. We'll see if that gets extended. So I'm sure that adds to people's anxiety in terms of if people have EAD applications in the works or they're delayed in getting everything. So I would just encourage people also to reach out to advocates if they're confused about what the rules are. And sometimes employers are confused about the rules. So it is very important to be an advocate for yourself, because the employer might not know that they can accept that letter instead of the actual card, because the I-9 form that they use when you apply, you know, when you get hired for a job is not going to list that letter. It's going to list the EAD. So solutions, a more fun topic. So, you know, we believe that people should not be living for any significant length of time in the US without access to citizenship and full rights that it entails. And so, you know, I think problem number one is we need more green cards to fix the backlogs of H-1B workers waiting in line for green cards. And of course, we want everyone in the family to get those green cards. A major bill that we work on at Advancing Justice AAJC, we work a lot on family-based immigration, and that's actually how we come to this issue, is looking at the spouses and children on H-4s and the inequality there. And so we work with Representative Judy Chu on the Reuniting Families Act, and she's the lead sponsor. And we have, like, I've lost track, maybe 90 other co-sponsors in the House. And that bill would clear the backlogs of people waiting in line in both family-based and employment-based visas. And then also she added some language this year, particularly to make sure if there were any backlogs in the future that, you know, spouses on H-4s and children on H-4s would have work authorization. For children, it would be when they turn 16, And for the age out problem that Sumana talked about takes care of that. As long as a child has a pending green card application, they would just never age out and always be able to get that green card and not lose their H-1B status at 21. So, I mean, those are pieces the bill does. A lot of other good stuff, you know, that also applies to undocumented people in the country and making sure that they can get sponsored by family members. And for folks who are in deportation proceedings, they can also find relief. So that's a big bill we work on, and covers a lot of stuff. And then Representative Jayapal, should have said before, the Trump administration did promise a federal court that they were going to rescind the H-4 EAD rule. First, they promised they would. Then they told a court something this year, like maybe they're doing something on it. So I'm hoping that what they did on July 15th in terms of just making it easier for adjudicators to deny it, well, we don't like that policy. It's not as bad as fully rescinding the H-4 EAD rule. So I'm hoping that's kind of what they were talking about when they promised the court in litigation. And so we'll see. They don't have time before the election to properly do notice and comment and rescind the rule. And so obviously a lot depends on whether, you know, the election results. I won't say more than that. And then Representative Jayapal is preparing to file a bill. She was going to file the bill when the rescission rule came out, but I think she wants to file it anyway to just make it law that spouses on H-4 visas have work authorization. So it's not this nebulous thing. And I actually, her office has been asking us, because some people are sort of pushing for a requirement that the spouses not be allowed to work at the same company as the H-1B recipient, as their spouse. And I think our gut feeling was that any limitation is bad, but you know, we wanted to hear from people from the community and directly affected people. So if you have an opinion on that, feel free to share or chat in the chat, or contact me directly.
Thanks, Megan. And I think it's really important for folks who are tuning in that this is a shared struggle. And so we really need a solution that's sort of covering all of our communities and protecting all of our communities. And so I encourage folks to really look at the Reuniting Families Act, and then also when Representative Jayapal's bill comes out to protect H-4 EAD holders, we'll share that with the community as well to advocate and to get more co-sponsors on both of those. The other piece is that we'd love to also, as Megan said, that we'd love to hear from community members and H-4 visa holders, what you think about components of the bill that ask whether or not, you know, should spouses be allowed to work for the same company as their H-1B spouse, and whether that should be included in the bill or not. So if you all have thoughts or ideas, please let us know. We'll share our contact info afterwards. Next, I'm just gonna pass it over to Meghna, who's really gonna share more about her new project, Dreams Uprooted, and what it will showcase, and then we'll go into the Q&A session.
Thank you, Manur. Can you hear me? Okay, so yeah, so this has been such an insightful discussion and so much happening that it's exciting. So after Heart Suspended released, you know, many spouses started writing to me and you know, really thanking me for sharing their story, because it was amazing that, you know, everyone who called me, they were like, this is my story. And in fact, many women asked me to make more documentaries about this. So I really, you know, so thank them, like, because of their support and encouragement. I was inspired to make another film about this issue. And also, you know, what happened initially is, like, when the women started writing to me, I formed a private Facebook group, you know, just to give them a safe space to really talk about and share resources. But then as that grew, even though it grew, I felt it was very limited in the scope and the reach that I wanted to have, and especially towards legislative change. But then, I created a newsletter, and a lot of the women volunteered, and they shared their stories and everything. And around this time also, SAALT invited me to screen Heart Suspended at the SAALT Summit, and we met with legislators after that, and shared my story over many years. And then finally in 2015, the H-4 AAD came out, which granted work authorization to over 100,000 spouses. And that was unbelievable because, for me, what started off as a short film, and I was very naive at that time saying like, I want to change this law. But it really actually happened, thanks to, I think, everyone's united efforts. And that really made me believe in the power of film even more, and feel that I need to continue doing this, because although 100,000 spouses got work authorization, as we mentioned, there's threat for it being rescinded. There's so many obstacles in that, and at the same time, the women who are newly married on the H-4, who are not eligible for the H-4 AAD, are the ones who are suffering the most. So I really felt like this is something, I need to continue doing. And so this film is really going to focus on, the transition of these women from ordinary housewives to, becoming advocates in their own right. How much they are struggling, to re-enter the workplace, and how much value they are creating, which brings happiness, to both themselves, their family, and society. Also, through these stories, I really want to dispel this myth that, I hear so often, that these women are playing victim, their struggles are not as much as other groups of immigrants. They are, taking away people's jobs, but what I really want to showcase is, these are really dynamic, powerful women who, against all odds, and living in this constant fear and anxiety, are really going for their dreams. And not only are they going for their own dreams, but they're creating jobs for so many people, which we really need right now. And also from my earlier film, I got a lot of comments like, why don't you just go back home? And to me, that was very surprising, because it was, a lot of the comments were coming from people who have actually never stepped out of their own country. They don't know what it's like, to leave your family behind, to start all over again. So I realized that, often immigration is very much looked through a very singular lens, which may be true. Historically, people have, migrated because of economic reasons. But at the same time, to view it only from that lens, in my opinion, is a very kind of a very narrow worldview. And so through my film, I really wish to help broaden this view, and give a deeper insight into what home means for all of us. So it's not just a physical space, but it's at the same time it's a spiritual and mental place where we want to exist as an entire being. So if you're denied your basic human rights, how can you build a life? And where we immigrants here, we want to build our life, we want to grow, and we want to help others grow as well. So in Dreams Uprooted, I really want to address, in a deeper way. Also, that was my first film. You could see a lot of production edges. Hopefully, I have a little more support this time, and I can, depict in depth, what there's a lot of gender-based discrimination. There's mental health. There's domestic violence. There's spousal abandonment, and then of course there's different kinds of trauma, and even for H-4 spouses and children who lose when the H-1 person on the H-1 passes away, they are forced to immediately leave the country. We saw this happen very recently, and before they can even grieve, they are being asked to leave, and that what kind of impact does that have? So I feel even though we've made so many strides, so many Americans still do not know that this inhumane treatment exists for this group of immigrants. And also they're not aware, the kind of talent that is being lost because of this, which ultimately will impact everyone, So I sincerely hope, like through Dreams Uprooted, I can, continue this conversation and bring it to a absolute victory for all people on H-4, and also bridge these gaps that we have in our hearts and minds. So if you want updates, you can subscribe at meghnadamani.com or treasuretowerfilms.org. And then also I'm always looking for people to collaborate, contribute, or volunteer. So I'm really happy to hear from anyone who wants to. And thank you so much for giving this platform for this really important issue.
Thanks so much, Meghna. We're really excited and looking forward to your new work, and hope to have this conversation in a better setting as well, more hopeful setting for all. I'd love to open it up to questions for folks on Facebook. Please feel free to chat it into the comments. And then I know that we have folks on Zoom, and I know there's a great conversation happening in our chat right now. So if folks want to just please queue up for any questions. You can stack in the comments.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Nupur Sahai. I'm a clinical psychologist based out of the Bay Area, and I've been in the US about a decade, and before that I worked as a psychologist in India. So I first want to just thank Mehnur, Meghna, Sumana, and Megan. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. I have a few comments related to what you all talked about, and then some questions related to that. One thought I had, especially as a mental health practitioner, was around the idea of choice. And, we've had the women's movement in India for decades, and they've done some really empowering work. And I've worked in nonprofit settings in India. And this question of choice, especially from a feminism and a gender perspective, always comes up. So I can't imagine how hard it is for women. And I've seen women in my family go through that who immigrated to the US. Because you've had this upbringing where you are raised to get an education, and then you're working, and then your normal completely shifts after coming to the US. So when you have that reference point of a life that you had and how empowering that was, and now you've lost choice, I mean, that is a trauma in and of itself. So that was just something I wanted to highlight, the traumatic piece of how the system oppresses you. I think something that comes up a lot in the South Asian diaspora as well as in India is related to shame. So one of the barriers to help seeking that I see in my work is, of course, there's the stigma, but there's also the shame of, I'm not enough. And there are these what we call microaggressions, right? Even small comments that family members and others could make with the best of intentions that are still microaggressions that give the message that you're not enough. And what I've seen in my work, even in the US, is I've seen communities be so resilient. I've seen these women, and I've been working throughout, but I have a lot of friends who are on H-4. I've seen them also sort of subvert that narrative, sort of the subaltern narrative. And I think that's really powerful in terms of not calling themselves ordinary housewives and recognizing that they do not have the choice, but being fully aware that within this choicelessness, this is the choice that I'm going to make. And I think that's really powerful, to reclaim what the word housewife even means for them. And I think it's sort of important to acknowledge that from a choice and a feminist perspective. And I'd love to hear what you all think about that. The other piece that stood out for me is something that I think Meghna's touched upon, and is the power and beauty of your filmmaking work is one of the crucial things that happens in mental health is isolation. Isolation is the number one. Isolation and loneliness is the number one thing leading to a lot of mental health issues, in addition to systemic oppression. And I think, Meghna, I just want to thank you. I think your work hits upon taking away the stigma and taking away the isolation by these women being able to come together and talk about it and to build allyship. I just spoke a lot, so I'm going to pause there. My questions are, just sort of one is related to, it's so grateful to see, Megan, the work that is being done at the policy level, because as much as we do work in our communities, unless it changes at the policy level, I don't think the shift is going to happen. And we can keep sort of spinning our wheels trying to empower the communities. So grateful to see the policy work you're doing. I'm also curious about, two pieces. One is sort of, in terms of acculturation, when folks immigrate over here, it's not easy to adapt to a new culture and go into the job market where your previous skills after especially such a gap can become redundant, or you need to find other ways, and there's financial challenges with that. So is there any programming and planning around sort of life skills from a job search perspective? Like for instance, back in India, cultural humility was a big thing. But in the US culture, if you are humble in your job search, it just doesn't work. This is a culture based on competition, so the humility is completely missed. But to me, that is a strength, you know, and now in the corporate world, humility and vulnerability are now buzzwords. But in the Indian culture, that's always been there. And my other question was around intersectionality. So I don't think we can talk about gender without talking about also caste. And right now there is major emphasis on caste in addition to race in the US. There's also major emphasis on caste with the discrimination case going on in Cisco right now in the corporate world. So I just want to also address the socioeconomic and the caste piece, and how do you all envision that as being a part of the work that needs to happen? Yeah, but thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here and to hear all the work that you're doing.
Thanks so much, Nupur. Those were really thoughtful comments and just things that we're all thinking of. I can definitely take on the caste piece. I think it's really critical in the work that we're seeing that Equality Labs is bringing up, where caste and anti-Blackness go hand in hand. So of course, in this country, we're seeing uprisings around anti-Black racism, and then we're also seeing more recently the court case that is, of course, you know, representing folks who are in the tech industry who have experienced discrimination based on caste and being unable to have a healthy workplace environment, or being able to, you know, have just work opportunities that are taken away. And so I think when we think about a just and humane immigration system going forward, as we're seeing the increase in climate change, as we're seeing an increase in South Asian detainees who are detained at the border, we're seeing that caste is apparent in all of those different areas. So it's critical for SAALT as well to be making sure that that is at the forefront of when we're doing policy advocacy and when we're doing detainee support or workers' rights support, or, you know, labor support, whatever it may be, to be always thinking about how caste especially shows up in our communities, both for communities here and then also our loved ones back home. And would anyone else like to take the first question? And Nupur, if you could just remind us what the first question was, just for folks.
Yeah, I was just asking about the life skills related to the job search process for the American industry, and I saw some comments around people wanting to answer to that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Thank you so much. That's a really important question because, you know, personally, I got my green card a while back, and now I'm a citizen. But at the same time, you know, it's not that once you get the work authorization, you're, you know, just ready to go. It's a lot of makeup that you have to do. And also wanted to thank you for all your deep insights, really valuable. So, you know, this is something, so recently we did a survey amongst the H-4 EAD group. And one of the questions we asked is, you know, what are the areas that you need most support or you feel is lacking? And so there was confidence, and then of course there was career and networking. So the purpose of, you know, doing the survey is to kind of take on these topics in the impact work that we do, you know, once the Dreams Uprooted is finished, which may be a while, but even in the meanwhile, you know, I'd love to collaborate with anyone to create workshops or, you know, some kind of avenue for women to even first of all acknowledge, because I think acknowledging is a big thing. I love the word you use, microaggression. That's so apt and so so taken for granted that we don't even realize that it's an aggression, right? And you know, years of that kind of accumulates in kind of not being able to have your voice. So thank you for bringing that up, and that's you know, just reminds me again how important it is. So we'll definitely address that.
I just wanted to give space. I think Aisha from Raksha is going to hop off, but would love to hear any closing thoughts that you might have. Aisha?
I'm sorry, everyone. I have to go in a few minutes, but I just wanted to tell everyone it was really great hearing everyone's perspective. Meghna, Megan, Sumana, Manur, Nupur, and Shivali, thank you for all being here. Thank you for the amazing knowledge, and it's been great connecting with you guys and hearing all of your guys' expertise and knowledge.
Thanks so much. I think I'm going to just ask a question that we're seeing on Facebook. So Sushumna Kanan asked, can we get together city-wise and create an employment portal to help ourselves? Those of us with EAD are not always able to find jobs. And I think I can start, but I have been seeing since COVID, and we've been seeing a lot of folks being unemployed. There have been really great resources, just like Google Excel sheets that have just ongoing lists of jobs that people are seeing come up. And I definitely think that in Meghna's Facebook group or other H4 wide Facebook groups, I think it's really critical for folks to be coming together and sharing that knowledge. I know that, yeah, I think it's a community-wide effort as well.
And really quickly, I think Shivali had a comment on Nupur's comments, and then yeah, Shivali, if you wanted to share, and then we can transition to the questions from Facebook quickly. Yeah, I know we're a little low on time, so.
Thank you. I'm Shivali. Hello. It's good to see some folks that I haven't seen in a while. Hey, Meghna. I was there when Meghna got her green card, which was very exciting. I'm Shivali Shah. I was the legal expert on her film. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been working with H-4s and H-1Bs since about 20 years now. I'm one of the founders of Kiran in North Carolina. Which works with battered South Asian women in the North Carolina Triangle area. I live in DC now. And one of the things that I wanted to comment on was I totally get where you're coming from, Nupur. A lot of my clients, when I'm working with them, a lot, especially the H-1B ones. So I work with H-4s on aggression that they're experiencing from their spouse, and I work with H-1Bs who are experiencing issues at work from their employer. Basically, each person that is experiencing something from the person who is sponsoring their visa. And in both cases, especially with H-1Bs, like sort of coaching them in how to advocate for themselves and in being more aggressive ends up becoming a lot of our dialogue when I'm giving them negotiating strategies. When we're talking about like, well, if this is what they're saying, then here are some things you can try, you know, to get these things that you need. It ends up just being a lot of teaching, negotiating, and sort of skills that sometimes, you know, like you said, they're not as well rewarded in India. And I know definitely when like I advocate for myself, a lot of, you know, older uncles are not that happy about that. And so it's definitely a thing that doesn't come naturally to a lot of Indians that come to the US. And that pervades, like you said, not just in your negotiating with your boss or with your spouse, but even when you're yourself looking for a job, right? You need, and so having like coaching in this, a lot of my legal work ends up sort of transitioning into just coaching and being just a supporter and saying, you know, and giving employment advice, and going into like a non-legal area. And so there is a place there for some kind of coaching that is needed in this area, particularly, you know, I mean, it's particularly with H-4 female spouses, but for just a lot of Indians in general that are coming to the US and other people from other cultures where, you know, there are similar values like this. Another question from Sushma about getting together with people in your city. I know that, you know, Meghna has been working really hard to bring H-4s together, and that has been wonderful. I think that when you're in a city, if you're thinking like locally, it really helps to get in touch with things outside the Indian community too. And I think that's another thing that I try to advocate with folks, is to just reach outside the Indian bubble and reach out, because a lot of times it's, I mean, I don't know about a lot of you have worked with battered women, but a lot, in my experience, a lot of times it'll be their non-Indian like coworker at work or their friend from the grocery store that will sort of first help them take the first couple of steps when they're in a potentially dangerous situation. So I've encouraged people to just look outside the Indian bubble as well. And also because H-4s, there's a lot of them, but not everybody connects some of their issues to being an H-4, right? I mean, and that's one of the things that this advocacy for H-4s is so important. I mean, a lot of women on H-4s are like, well, I'm not getting a job because I'm not qualified enough, or my personality is like this, or, you know, I mean, it's because like I studied this and not that, or I wasn't that, you know, it just, all the self-doubt comes in, and, you know, and you sort of forget that there's some very basic thing underlying all of that, and that there's a restriction on you that is making it super difficult for you to be in the US in the same way that your husband is, and in the way that many other immigrants here are allowed to be. So a lot of people don't connect their issues with getting a job, or with their depression, or with their issues with their spouse, to specifically being on an H-4, and that's why this kind of advocacy is so important. I'm done.
Thanks so much, Shivali. I think all the things that you named were so critical, and things that we're thinking about, and you know, in the advocacy that work that we're doing, as well as just caring for our communities during this really difficult time. It's just so important. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments in the comment section. Yeah, Radhika Sharma just said it would be great if each of our South Asian affiliated organizations could arrange online presentations for H-4 visa holders to present on their work in South Asia and their interests and observations here in the US. I think it's really important to build community at this time, and I think we're gonna start wrapping up. I know there's a lot of different questions on Facebook, so I'd love to continue this conversation as well, but you know, we're definitely seeing this administration targeting various visa categories, from J1 workers to H1B to H4. And so it's really critical for us to come together and, you know, advocate for all of our communities to make sure that we're all, you know, all of our challenges are heard, and that we're really working towards a really humane immigration system. So I wanted to thank you all for your expertise, for your grace, and I know we extended over 15 minutes, but this conversation was really important, and we'll be sharing all of the resources that folks mentioned on this call, and as well as Meghna's incredible film and upcoming film as well. And thank you to Megan for your policy expertise, and we'll again be sharing all of these critical legislations and resources, and really hope to continue this conversation. So thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. It's great.